The lobby was polished marble, soft golden lights reflecting off the chandelier, but all you could feel was the weight of silence. A black woman in her late 40s stepped through the glass doors, not loud, not flamboyant, just steady. Her name was Vanessa Clayborne. To you, she might look like another traveler with a worn duffel bag searching for rest. To the receptionist, she looked like a problem. The young woman behind the desk barely glanced up, her pen still tapping against her teeth. She forced a smile, the kind you reserve for strangers you don't respect, and asked for a reservation. Vanessa gave her name softly, as though it should have meant something. But the receptionist's fingers froze on the keyboard. Her tone changed. "Sorry, ma'am, we're full. Guests only." Those words. Guests only. Think about that. A black woman standing in a lobby she paid to design, in a hotel she fought bankers to fund, in a building with her name written into every document, and she was told she wasn't a guest. She wasn't allowed in, and nobody flinched. Nobody thought twice. The couple in golf polos glanced over. The man by the fireplace leaned back in his chair. The whispers started before the truth had a chance to surface. Because people weren't looking at the paperwork, they weren't looking at the title deed, they were looking at her skin, at her presence, at everything they thought they knew. That moment is the heart of America's quiet sickness. Not the loud slurs, not the burning crosses, the polite rejection, the carefully worded exclusion, the mask of policy that hides the face of prejudice. Vanessa could have pulled out her ID. She could have opened her phone, scrolled through 100 photos of ribbon cuttings and press conferences. She could have raised her voice, demanded, threatened, but she didn't. She stood still, the way her ancestors had stood when sheriffs barked at the M2 move. She stood still the way her father had stood when security guards followed him through department stores in the 80s. She stood still with a fire that burned cold because she knew the weight of what was happening. And then, without blinking, she made one phone call. 26 seconds. No argument, no pleading, just a name, a location, and 6 words. "I've been denied access to my own property." That was all it took for the walls to begin shaking. The seconds after the call felt like hours. Vanessa didn't move. She leaned against the marble pillar, phone still in hand, face calm but unshakable. Around her, the lobby buzzed with the kind of nervous energy people pretend not to feel. The receptionist whispered into the desk phone. Security drifted closer, not aggressive yet, but close enough to remind her that in their eyes she was already a threat, a black woman refusing to back down. That alone was enough to summon men in uniforms. And here's the truth most people don't want to hear. Power is never neutral. The receptionist didn't just deny her a room. She tried to deny her existence, her right to belong in a space she owned. And that's the quiet reality so many live through every day. Not the screaming insult, not the headline story, the silent theft of dignity, repeated again and again until it eats away at your soul. Vanessa knew that feeling too well. She had lived through it at airports, where her first-class boarding pass was double-checked while others strolled through. She had felt it at car dealerships, where salesmen ignored her until her white assistant walked in. She had carried it like a shadow through every boardroom, every handshake, every deal. And tonight, it was standing in front of her again, in the lobby of a building her empire had built. The elevator dinged. 2 men in corporate suits stepped out. Regional executives, faces tight with pow. Nick. They crossed the lobby fast, brushing past guests, heading straight for Vanessa. Suddenly the air shifted, the whispers stopped. The same people who doubted her 5 minutes ago now stared with wide eyes. "Miss Clayborne," the taller man said, his voice too quick, too desperate. "We are so sorry. This should never have happened. Your suite is being prepared immediately." The receptionist froze. Her phone slipped in her hand. She realized too late that she hadn't been guarding a lobby from an unworthy stranger. She had been standing in judgment of the very woman signing her paychecks. Vanessa didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She simply asked, "Have I been checked in?" The men nodded fast, stumbling over themselves to assure her. The room had turned. Power had revealed itself, and now every single person was watching her, waiting to see what she would do. But Vanessa wasn't thinking about her suite. She was thinking about something much deeper, the question of why, in her own house, she was still treated like an intruder. The lobby looked different now. Same walls, same chandelier, same scent of polished wood and espresso. But the air had shifted. The same receptionist who dismissed her was biting her lip, scrolling frantically under the desk, probably Googling Vanessa's name, praying the search results weren't real. The assistant manager hovered near the fireplace, clipboard in hand, pretending to be in control while sweat glistened under his collar. Vanessa had seen this play 1,000 times before. First, they doubt you. Then they dismiss you. And finally, when the truth lands like a hammer, they scramble to rewrite the script, hoping their sudden respect will erase the insult. But respect given after recognition isn't respect, it's survival. It's fear dressed up as politeness. She thought of the first time she'd ever been denied entry to a place she owned. It wasn't a hotel, it was a restaurant in Milwaukee years ago when she was just 28. She had scraped together everything she had to open the restaurant. And on opening night, a white couple walked in, looked her up and down, and asked if they could speak to the actual owner. That night she smiled through the sting. Tonight she wasn't smiling. Security guards still lingered nearby, eyes darting between her and the executives who now bent over backwards. Their presence was a reminder. In America, black success doesn't erase suspicion. You can build wealth, sign checks, employ hundreds, and still, a stranger with acrylic nails and a minimum wage paycheck can decide you don't belong. That's not about rules. That's not about policy. That's about something deeper, something rotting beneath the surface of polite society. And here's the dangerous truth. When people look at you, they don't just see you. They see a picture burned into their minds by decades of conditioning. They see what they've been told power should look like, ownership should look like, white, male, older. Anything outside that frame feels like a trick, a lie, an impossibility. So when Vanessa said, "I own this hotel," the receptionist's smirk wasn't just disbelief. It was the reflex of a mind trained to reject certain truths. A reflex America has been perfecting for centuries. Vanessa didn't fight it. She didn't plead. She simply stood still, holding the silence until the silence itself became unbearable. Because she knew, sometimes the greatest power move isn't raising your voice, it's forcing them to hear their own doubt echo back at them. The assistant manager, Neil, finally stepped forward, crooked tie, clipboard trembling in his hand, his voice wobbling between forced politeness and quiet panic. "Miss Clayborne, we just need to verify a few details." Verify. That word cut like glass. Think about it. A black woman with her name etched into every contract, her signature across every bank loan, and still verify. Always ask to prove, to explain, to justify. White guests breezed past with nothing but a last name and a credit card, but her, they needed proof. They always needed proof. Vanessa tilted her head slightly, eyes locked on Neil. She didn't shout, she didn't beg, she simply said, "You can verify all you want, I'm not moving." The silence after those words was heavy. The couple near the window shifted uncomfortably. A man with a laptop froze mid-typing, pretending not to eavesdrop. Even the doorman stopped greeting arrivals, caught in the invisible grip of what was unfolding. And then, the elevator chimed again. Two men in tailored suits stepped out with the urgency of soldiers arriving on a battlefield. Brent Kessler, Regional Vice President, Carlos Reno, District Manager. Vanessa recognized them immediately, which only made their flustered apologies sting deeper. "Miss Clayborne, we are so sorry. This never should have happened," Brent said quickly, his words tripping over each other. "Your suite is ready, transportation arranged, fruit tray, espresso, your usual. Everything is being corrected immediately." Corrected. Another glass-cutting word, because the wound wasn't in the logistics. The wound was in the assumption, the presumption. The ease with which they had dismissed her before her name carried weight in the room. Vanessa nodded slowly, voice even. "Have I been checked in?" "Yes," Brent answered, clipboard trembling now. 2 keycards, Suite 1202, incident report on the way. Vanessa didn't smile, didn't soften. She simply reached out, took the keycards and said, "Good." But inside her chest, something darker moved. This wasn't just about a room. This was about every time someone looked at her and decided she was less. Every time they weighed her skin before her status, her presence before her power. She turned toward the elevator, slow, deliberate steps, knowing all eyes followed her. And in that silence, every person in the lobby learned something they'd never admit out loud. The room only shifted once her power was revealed, not her humanity. The elevator doors closed, and for the first time that night, Vanessa exhaled. Not relief. No, she wasn't naive enough for that. It was the kind of release you take when you know you've just walked through another storm, and the rain hasn't even dried yet. The suite was spotless. Lemon polish, eucalyptus oil, a fruit tray arranged with surgical precision. On the table sat a card with her initials scrawled in a rushed, nervous hand. To anyone else, it looked like hospitality. To her, it looked like panic disguised as kindness. She set her bag down slowly, running her hand across the marble counter. It wasn't just stone, it was memory. Every inch of this hotel was born from her sacrifice. She remembered being 33, pitching the first Clayborne property to a bank full of men who smirked at her like she was telling a fairy tale. They offered brutal loan terms, practically daring her to try. She took them. She built it. And now, 20 years later, she still had to prove herself in her own empire. She sat on the edge of the bed, eyes fixed on the skyline beyond the window. Lights flickered across Des Moines, headlights weaving down Grand Avenue. The city buzzed, indifferent to the storm that had just passed in its tallest hotel. And that's when the old memory hit her like a punch to the ribs. Milwaukee, 1998. She was a brand new VP walking into a lobby where security followed her like a shadow. The only thing that saved her was the CFO walking down to greet her personally. She had smiled then, brushed it off. But it cut. It always cut. That's the hidden tax of success when your skin is black in America. It's not just the work you do, it's the armor you carry. The silent weight of knowing that at any moment someone will look at you and decide you don't belong, no matter what you've built. Vanessa poured herself a glass of water, staring at her reflection in the window. She could have gone pub. Like, one tweet, one interview, and this lobby humiliation would explode across every news outlet. But that wasn't the battle she wanted tonight. This wasn't about rage. This was about respect. And respect, she knew, wasn't something you demanded with headlines. It was something you carved out of silence, forcing the world to look at you, even when it wanted to look away. Morning sunlight sliced through the blinds, casting sharp lines across the suite. Vanessa was already awake, dressed in a crisp navy suit. Her face in the mirror was calm, collected, but her eyes carried the storm of last night. At exactly 8:30 a.m., there was a knock. When she opened the door, 3 people stood stiff in the hallway. Brent, the regional VP, Neil, the assistant manager from the lobby, and a woman in a gray blazer holding a leather folder, human resources. They filed inside like students summoned to the principal's office. The fruit tray from last night still sat untouched on the table, a quiet reminder of their failed attempt to smooth over humiliation with sweetness. "Miss Clayborne," Brent began, his smile thin. "We want to sincerely apologize again. This was an isolated—" Vanessa raised her hand. Just a small gesture, but it cut him mid-sentence. "Stop. Before you tell me it was an isolated incident, ask yourself, why was security already circling me before anyone confirmed who I was? Why was I treated like a trespasser in a space I built?" Silence. The HR woman shifted in her seat, uncapping her pen nervously. Neil stared at the carpet. Vanessa leaned forward, voice low but sharp. "I don't want excuses. I don't want a fruit basket. I want accountability." Brent cleared his throat. "We'll issue retraining to staff." "Retraining?" Vanessa's tone sliced through the room. Do you think unconscious bias disappears with a PowerPoint slide and free pastries? You don't need a training session. You need a cultural reset. And it starts with how you see people when they walk through those doors. Neil finally spoke, voice shaking. I didn't mean to offend. You were just following the reflex you've been conditioned to trust, Vanessa interrupted. That reflex says a black woman doesn't belong unless she proves herself. And I'm tired of proving. The HR woman scribbled furiously, but Vanessa wasn't speaking for the report. She was speaking for every moment of dismissal that had stacked on her shoulders like bricks. She stood slowly, commanding the room without raising her voice. Here's what's going to happen. A written policy on equity, a real training program that digs deeper than buzzwords, and the next time one of my properties makes a guest feel invisible, whether they own the building or not, you won't be sitting in this office. You'll be clearing out your desk. Her words landed like thunder in a room that had no place to hide. Vanessa walked out of the conference room like a shadow gliding across sunlight. The lobby had already started to stir with the morning rush. Coffee orders, checkouts, low murmurs of conversation, but everything shifted the moment she appeared. Heads turned instinctively. Conversations faltered mid-sentence. Even the barista paused, espresso wand frozen in mid-pour. She didn't acknowledge anyone. Not the receptionist who had doubted her, not the assistant manager whose tie was crooked from panic, not even the guests who had gossiped quietly in corners. She was beyond performance. She was beyond apology. She was proof. Every step she took was measured, deliberate, silent authority humming beneath her calm exterior. People who had never truly seen her before, the ones who thought power had a color, a gender, a familiar face, saw it now, not shouted, not demanded, simply there, undeniable, in the rhythm of her walk, the tilt of her chin, the way her eyes scanned the room with effortless control. The lobby staff straightened themselves as if an invisible line had been drawn across the marble floor. The receptionist's nails tapped. Ed nervously on the counter, no longer careless but anxious. Neil rubbed his palms together, a futile attempt to reclaim composure. Guests whispered, some glanced away, others stared, eyes wide, unsure of how to react. And Vanessa understood something profound in that moment. Power is not what you're handed. Power is the truth you carry, the history you embody, the patience to let the world stumble over its own assumptions. People can deny you, question you, humiliate you, but they cannot erase you. Not when every brick of every building, every signature on every contract, every moment of your life proves your presence. She reached the elevator, slowed just enough to let the crowd absorb the quiet of her authority. Key cards in hand, she pressed the button for the 12th floor, not to retreat but to reclaim the space. She moved through the lobby like a lesson being taught without words. And as the doors closed, Vanessa looked back once, not in triumph, not in anger, but in observation. Every person watching would carry this memory forward, that someone could stand still, be denied, be questioned, and yet remain unbroken. That power, true power, isn't loud, it's undeniable. For a moment the lobby felt smaller, heavier, aware. And Vanessa knew as the elevator hummed upward that this was just the beginning. The staff lounge was quiet, almost painfully so. Vanessa didn't summon anyone. She didn't need to. She walked in, each step slow, deliberate, until she found Kayla Mendez, the receptionist who had doubted her, sitting alone at a narrow table with a half-eaten muffin and her phone face down. Kayla's eyes widened instantly. She nearly toppled her cup as Vanessa pulled out a chair and sat across from her. No entourage, no HR watching, just two human beings in a small room, one of them holding the weight of decades of dismissal in her gaze. "Relax," Vanessa said, voice soft but firm. "I just want to talk." Kayla swallowed hard, nodded, and for the first time dropped the title ma'am. Vanessa didn't correct her. This wasn't a courtroom. This was a moment of truth. Have you ever worked somewhere you felt invisible? Vanessa asked. Kayla hesitated, then nodded. Yeah, most of the time. Tell me. Kayla spoke quietly about a diner along I-80. Paper hat, endless yelling, never enough tips, never enough acknowledgement. She spoke about being small, overlooked, discounted, and Vanessa listened, silently tallying the echoes of her own past. The hotels, the boardrooms, the security shadows, the assumptions stitched into every glance. Then you know, Vanessa said, leaning back slightly, what it feels like to be ignored. Kayla nodded. Help me understand something, Vanessa continued. Last night, when you looked at me, you decided I didn't belong here. You didn't even ask why. Why? Kayla's voice trembled. I didn't mean to. I thought you were maybe lost, or waiting for someone else. You didn't look like... Like what? Vanessa prompted, calm but insistent. Like the kind of person who owns hotels, Kayla admitted, eyes downcast. Vanessa let it hang. That phrase carried more than apology. It carried the centuries of assumptions, the conditioned bias, the stories we tell ourselves about who belongs, who leads, who commands space. People have a picture in their heads, Vanessa said, quiet, deliberate. Clean-cut, male, older, not me. And that picture doesn't just live in your head, it shapes your actions. Every decision you make, every glance you throw, every assumption you carry. Kayla's voice was barely audible. I'm sorry. Vanessa nodded. It's a start. But I'm not here for apologies. I'm here for understanding. So next time when someone stands before you, I want you to see them, really see them, not the picture in your head, not the script society gave you, just them. There was silence, heavy, transformative, as if the room itself was holding its breath. And in that silence, something shifted, not just in Kayla, but in the echo of every lobby, every encounter, every glance that had ever carried doubt instead of recognition. That respect, real respect, had been earned that morning, not through rage, not through threats, but through the simple, terrifying act of being seen. Vanessa left the staff lounge without another word. The lobby had quieted. Conversations paused mid-sentence. Even the elevators seemed to hum more cautiously. She didn't look back. Not because she didn't want to witness their reaction, but because she knew the lesson had already landed. The truth doesn't need applause. It doesn't need recognition. It simply exists, and the world will adjust. Eventually. She walked past the guests who had been watching her all morning. Some whispered, some avoided eye contact, some stared with awe, unsure what they had just witnessed. And that's the reality of power when it is unyielding, when it is quiet but absolute. It makes people uncomfortable, forces them to confront assumptions they'd rather ignore, shakes them into awareness. The morning light spilled across the lobby, gilding the marble floors and chandeliers, yet Vanessa felt the weight of every other place she'd ever been. Airports, boardrooms, restaurants, hotel lobbies, each one a microcosm of a society trained to doubt her before knowing her. And each time she had survived, persisted, carved her path despite the disbelief. Now she understood something most people will never fully grasp. The true cost of being seen when the world refuses to look at you. It's exhausting. It's infuriating. But it is also transformative. The power doesn't come from proving them wrong. It comes from proving yourself right. The confidence to remain still while the world scrambles to catch up. And here's the secret most people refuse to acknowledge. The same reflexes that denied Vanessa her suite, her recognition, her respect. They exist everywhere. In workplaces, in classrooms, in neighborhoods, in history itself. The assumptions, the biases, the invisible barriers, they shape outcomes, limit potential, and whistle lies to every generation. So now, take a moment. Think about the people you pass every day. The ones you glance over. The ones you dismiss before you even know them. And remember what Vanessa demonstrated. That visibility, dignity, and authority are not gifts. They are fought for, claimed, and embodied. They are earned in silence and carried with patience. If you're ready to step into awareness, comment this phrase twice below. I see them as they are. Say it. Write it. Feel it. Let it echo in your mind, because seeing is the first step toward understanding, and understanding is the first step toward real change. The world doesn't shift overnight, but the moment you see clearly, you become impossible to ignore.